Welcome to Romance Unzipped, your happily ever after book club. I'm Holly.
And I'm Annie. We read, write, and obsess about all things romance.
Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Holly.
Hey, I'm Annie.
We are Romance Unzipped, your happily ever after podcast.
Yes, each episode we review a new romance book, and today we are reading Hot Blooded by Heather Guerre. We're not reading it, we're reviewing it.
We already read it.
We spoiler, we read it, and they do end up together. Holly, what is The Quick and Dirty?
This is a contemporary vampire novel. It's very lighthearted. It was almost like giving me a hug, but it is vampire. He does feed from her.
Yeah.
This is set in Chicago. The entire book just about takes place at night, so it's kind of a different setting than I'm used to.
Yeah.
Most of it's in his apartment, and I think his apartment does a great job of giving clues about his personality.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of it around the city or in her house, but much of it takes place in Amos's apartment. He is a vampire that turned from mortal to immortal 150 years ago. Is that what you said?
So it's an age gap.
Yes, there's an age gap. She's immortal. Sorry, she is a mortal. He is immortal. And the setup for how they meet is kind of fun. He has been feasting or feeding on just bags of blood like that you get at the Red Cross blood drive for the last 100 years, because since then that's when technology existed that you could get blood from donors. And morally, he didn't want to attack innocent humans, but it's not as good. I get the impression it's eating freeze-dried food or eating like a warm shake that just has protein in it but no flavor, kind of coagulated. So he's just been dreaming for 100 years to have an actual live human and enjoy his feeding properly, but he hasn't had the moral circumstances to do it. And now there's this agency that's very secretive, and it keeps track of all the people, make sure that nobody's doing anything nefarious. And he gets assigned a donor who is willing to let him have her blood in exchange for money. And he doesn't have to kill her. He can take enough blood that he gets what he needs, but she still lives. This isn't like as soon as he bites her, she automatically turns into a vampire.
Yeah, so just backtrack. It's contemporary. It's male-female romance. And it is, as you said, Holly, it's a vampire, but it isn't, there's scary danger elements, but kind of in the vein, not as like um, fantastical as our first episode with that time I got drunk and needed a love potion, a werewolf, but it also is kind of like a cozy vampire, like it feels good. So, and the steam level is, what would you say? I don't
Maybe
know.
a 3,
Yeah,
maybe
three.
a 2. Most of their intimate scenes are just when he is feeding on her. They're not actually
Yeah,
having any kind of sex. It's just the intimacy of them being so close. And he's literally like his fangs are inside of her, and
yeah,
she likes it. He likes it.
yeah. Well, it's overtly sexual because she's orgasming every time she
Sure.
gets her blood. But
So
yeah,
it is a sex scene, but it's not using any genitals.
no, it's like I was gonna make a bad metaphor, and then I was like, no. I'm showing restraint, just like Amos shows restraint in this book.
He is a gentleman. He is constantly fighting between trying to be a gentleman and treat
And his,
Tessa the right way, but he's an animal. He's a monster. He has these urges and these instincts, and he's constantly trying to tamp them down.
yeah, yeah, and therein lies the crux and the beauty of Amos, right? Is why we love him, is because
Mm.
this beautifully complex man. So yeah, I would say that's quick and dirty.
Yeah, the tropes are, like we said, vampire.
Vampire, fated mate with slash blood mate, which is
Mhm.
to the shifter world, I guess it's a blood mate. I don't know if that's across the board vampire books call it that, but
I don't either. This is my first foray into vampire. I didn't even have like an Anne Rice preteen phase that I went through. So
wow.
I don't know how much of this book is consistent with all vampire or if it's just particular to what Heather Guerre wanted in this story, which is kind of fun.
That is fun. Oh my gosh, you're just like the virgin main female character who's untouched, and we get to have like the teaching kink and corrupt you.
Yes, you can sully me. I haven't even seen or read Twilight.
Oh
I
my God.
know, I missed.
Okay, we won't go into it.
It's a whole thing. I'm well aware of the pop culture phenomenon. It just passed me by.
Yeah, fair. Just side note, Holly's daughter, who is pre-tween, said to her the other day that Holly had made a joke, and her daughter said, "Mom, you just ruined it. I didn't know Darth Vader was his dad."
Yeah, she got upset that I spoiled Star Wars, and I was like, "Ooh, kid, this movie's over 40 years old. That's not my fault."
It's like you
But
and Twilight, you're like, wait, what? He's
she
a
was
big
incredulous. She's like, "What? Why did you say that?" I'm like, Everybody knows. It's like on commercials now. This is not me. This is society.
with this round.
You gotta get on this, kid. This is not something that people can withhold from you."
That's
And
fun.
I agree. If you're going to say something about Twilight, that's on me if I don't know
No,
what's happened yet.
respect your boundaries. I would say there's a lot of vampire books that veer into the paranormal camp, I think, or the fantastical world. And often they're kind of dark, where it's this kind of dystopian world, perhaps, or there's a lot of like battling for power and vying for power. And this felt very like human and cozy, although there was danger elements from like
From the werewolves.
yeah, from the werewolves and like rogue magic creatures. But I think a fun one to liken this to would be, I would say, like the mothership of vampire series. And I'm probably Anne Rice is like, no, girl, that was me. But in this vein, is Charlene Harris's series, the Southern, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like the Southern Vampire, and it is what inspired the movie, the TV series True Blood. So
Okay.
all those characters, and it's really fun. So it's like scary. There's some parts that are a little scary, but it's also like cute and charming and quirky. What other tropes were there, Holly?
I felt a found family trope in this one. She wasn't exactly joining a big family, but he had his dame vampire, the one that turned him into a vampire, was his best friend, and then she had her bloodmate who's immortal but attached to Etta, his dame. And those two were so welcoming and they really helped her integrate into the customs and just the way it is to be living with a vampire.
Yeah.
And her own family was terrible. I really hated her family. In fact, I think they were written too harshly because when they were on the page, I was just kind of like, "Argh," just scowling a little bit.
Yeah,
They
they
didn't
were aggressive.
have redeeming qualities.
Yeah, it was a lot. They were terrible. You're
But
right.
it did contrast really well with Amos because the main problem with her family is they took her for granted and she did all these things for her and they did nothing for her in
Vampires,
return. What was that?
energy vampires.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were. They were energy vampires. And then Amos, on the other hand, is just head over heels instantly with her and is so intent on giving her what she deserves and treating her well, and to the point that he's even holding back on his own internal instincts just so he can be a gentleman and go slow with her and not scare her and
Yeah.
give her respect. So she kind of not only became his bloodmate, but worked herself into his little pack.
Yeah. Well, and it's like her family is just feeding off her, and he's literally feeding off her. He's
Yes.
replenishing her and like filling her up. Wow, Heather Guerre, way to
Yeah,
like,
way to go. Every time he would feed from her, he would bring out all these snacks and almost like a nagging mother, like, eat, eat, oh, here, drink. And he'd open the snack for her and shove it into her face, and he'd open like a smoothie and give it to her
yeah,
because he was saying, oh, you're a human and you just lost some blood. You're going to need this for your blood sugar.
he's
And he
constant.
can't even eat. That's part of the uh,
Yeah.
consequence of being a vampire. So he has food in his house just for her sake, which is sweet.
It's really speaks to my reader instinct to snack and read. So I'm like,
It's like those people that watch the playlist and then they listen to the songs while they're reading, and you're just reading the snacks he's giving her. You're like, oh yeah, I should have some Pringles right now.
yeah. Oh, pomegranate juice. Don't mind if I do. Other we also we said it was fated mates, blood mate trope, I think was the main one. And there's this kind of from business to love or from money to love element. And I don't even know what that trope is called, but it's like he hires her and she needs money and she's providing a service, but then it goes from them contracting this or like having this financial exchange to they're in love with each other. And then the other big trope was like primal play, consensual, non-consent, like hunter, hunty. Do they
Yeah,
call it?
he liked feeding her in any context, but what he really liked
I love
was
it.
hunting her, and she was into it, and really wanted to make sure she liked it. And they had a safe word, and she
Yeah.
would sometimes we'd see from her point of view that she knew she was about to get hunted, and like her pulse would quicken. But he just said to her, "You can go anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. I'm going to find you." And she just would take off walking in the city, and then she'd like hear a sound, and he'd just be on top of her, and he would say like, fight as hard as you can. And in her point of view, she'd even say, I know that I can't get away from him, but I'm going to struggle and fight anyway because he likes it so much.
That is the heart of consensual non-consent.
Mm.
It's this agreement, this safe agreement that we both get excited about this thing, knowing that we can trust the other person, that they're when that it'll stop immediately if I need it to. But it's like that adrenaline.
Yeah, that those two found each other.
Yeah, and she kind of egged it on. I don't think he even broached it. She was just like teasing it out, and that's why the steam level is not super high, but it's like low grade hot the whole time because there's this, I think as writing it, she does this great job of kind of evoking the feelings in each of their bodies and
Hmm.
experience and their excitement and just this like headiness that it's like intoxicated with each other almost. So this very intoxicating man, it comes across as kind of bland to start. Holly had his
She said he had an honest face. She
yeah,
said he's not exactly attractive, but he's honest. And then she described some features. It sounds like he's just a big, blocky guy. He's got a wide jaw, and she describes him with crow's feet and like wrinkles on his face. He's got kind of sandy brownish hair that's short. So he sounds quite masculine, and that he has this draw, but not necessarily rugged beauty.
yeah. So she said he's 42 when he was turned. So he has the face of someone who's 42 and broad cheekbones, not high cheekbones, first time maybe ever in a romance book. Heavy brow, blocky jaw, sturdy, corn-fed farm boy type from a bygone era. And he's pale, he has white skin, pale and red irises. And when she first, how she describes him evolves through the book as her feelings and
Mm.
changes. So the first in her head, she calls him the undead farm boy. That was awesome. As it goes on, she's like, oh, his watchfulness and his like predator nature. And she kind of sees these pieces that he really tries to be this like polite, old-fashioned guy, but like you said, he also is
A
yeah,
monster.
a monster. Yeah, he's like the apex predator. And
She
so
loves the fact that he is so where she gets most excited when he can't help himself, and she can see that he's trying to be polite, but he's just bubbling over, and he does a great job of keeping that at bay until she starts to poke him just a little, and she'll say things, oh, but what if you did hunt me? Well, what if you did pin me down? And then in his point of view, he's usually like, oh, don't do that, I can't handle it anymore. It's a dual point of view book, but it's third person, and I usually find third person dual point of views, I have less of an idea of what's going on in their head. I mean, I think that's how most people would read it. But because he was so intent on describing the conflict between what he wanted and what he felt was giving enough respect to Tessa and what was socially acceptable, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on in his head, even without first person.
yeah, well, and I felt like I was in his head because the narration was of his thoughts in a really
Mm.
way. So I was like, I felt with him. That as her attraction and their connection grows, she starts noticing all these things about him that at first she wrote off. And at one time he's talking and she's drawn to the simple poetry of his words and like the rumble of his voice. So it's just this
Mm-hmm.
all encompassing Amos that just kind of like surrounds her, not in a smothering way. And I really love it. So we can talk in a minute about their personalities, but he says this thing to her that I love when he's like formally thrown his hat in the ring.
When he says he wants to court her.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
so
that's how he lets her know how he feels. Forget about the fact that anytime they're next to each other, his erection is pushing into her.
yeah, and she's humping his leg.
Right, but he says he wants to court her. It's hard to tell if he is acting that way because he's just such a gentleman and that's his character, or because he grew up in a time when society was a little more formal. And sometimes she wonders, or she at least notices, that he's old fashioned in his either language or the way he interacts with her. It makes it so charming. It's this refreshing masculinity because he's very confident, and he's, of course he's confident. He said before, like, oh, nobody could hurt you if I'm around. Like, he's stronger than anyone.
Walk down any street in the
He can
city.
move into the shadows and like melt into shadows. He's can be so fast it's almost like he's flying. I don't think he's literally flying, but he can move faster than a human. He's stronger than a human. But his masculinity that's so intoxicating to her isn't necessarily those strengths. It's more just the confidence and the like nourishment that he gives her at all times.
Yeah, he's like classic alpha protector. Like from the very first moment when he opens the door and he's so excited, he's going to get this blood donor. He hasn't fed off live blood in 100 years. And he opens the door and he goes, "Oh no, she's a woman." He's just like, oh, because he had put that in the equation. And his immediate response to seeing her is she looks tired and he wants to wrap her in a blanket and protect her. So it's like this very nurturing, like alpha instinct, but then it isn't coupled with like the romance genre, our classic alpha, if it's there's males in the book, are they're like toxic masculinity that we love, right?
Mhm.
Like strong and tough and da da da. And he's just like he buys her flowers and he's really thoughtful and he's kind of quiet and he wants his slacks to be pressed and his house to be clean. And he's very she thinks of him as first as kind of like a fussy grandma,
Mhm.
which is not what you would normally be when you think
Not
of
the sexiest thought.
like your
No, but she likes it, especially since she's got this chaos of her own life where she's taking care of her mom and she's always on the hook for helping her brother take care of his kids. And she loves all these people, but she's resentful because they just make messes and she has to clean them up. And then when she's with Amos, it's the opposite. He wants to do everything he can to take care of her.
yeah.
So you mentioned as soon as he opens the door, he says, oh no. Not only is it a woman, but he's super attracted to her. And she was wearing scrubs because she's on her way to her work after this. I love the setup. She works night shift at a hospice.
Mhm.
So she's already in the world only at night, and she's already kind of dealing with people near death.
Yes, and she is not scared of emergency. She's not scared of gore. She's not scared of like high intensity situations. So she's kind of been primed to be
Yes, she's the perfect
bloodmate.
vessel. So he says she's almost as tall as I am. She's very curvy. She's just a beautiful woman.
Mhm.
At one time in her point of view, she's saying, "Oh, I feel kind of bad. Like I wore this top that's really busting up all my cleavage, and now he keeps staring." But she's so charmed because she catches his eyes going too low, and then she's thinking, "Yeah, but I wore this on purpose. Like, doesn't he know that I want him to appreciate me when I show off like this?"
Yeah, and he's like, but it's not appropriate to look at her ankles. Just like, yeah, so he sees her and she has long, dark, curly hair, golden tan skin, dark eyes, lush curves, like you said, 5'10". He says dark eyes like molasses.
Mm.
Hmm. And yeah, he's pretty much taken immediately. And of course, classic vampire, he loves how she smells.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he said, "You smell like heaven and you taste like paradise."
Ooh,
Sounds like an 80s glam rock.
that really is. I already briefly mentioned his dame that turned him. That's Etta. She was only 19 when she turned, and they have this really cute dynamic where she thinks of herself as his mother, but she's only been a vampire for 1 year longer than he was because she was a very fresh vampire when she turned him. And she's looks 19. So
Yeah,
he says, I've lived longer than you when you combine
yeah.
both our human and vampire lives, but it's kind of tongue in cheek. And never listens to that and is just
She's like a
almost
boss.
egging him on. I love her character. She is sassy. She's got this wild aesthetic just with her clothes and
She has long locks and they're black until the tips are hot pink. And she wears electric blue jumpsuits and spike heels and super glam makeup. And it's kind of like a sexy David Bowie sounding vibe.
I can see that.
And then Fran is got her own fabulous aesthetic. It sounds very like kind of androgynous 1920s-esque. And I like too that they are just casually this lady couple without it being a big pronouncement in the book,
Hmm.
that they weren't any kind of prototype of a lady couple. They seem to be a unique set of characters.
And Tessa goes to their house and she describes it as it's like the inside of a very wealthy woman's jewelry box. And
God,
that made me think of the I Dream of Jeannie. And I was imagining that you would probably, or at least some version of you, maybe in the past, but would love to have a house that looks like the inside of a very wealthy woman's jewelry box.
oh my God, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes.
Huh.
Oh, Holly, thank you.
I was thinking of you.
Yeah, so they were fun characters and they played nicely for a foil to showcase how this whole vampire world works within the human world, because in each book is different. I think with people who write fiction where or romance novels where there's kind of a alternate reality. And so in this one, humans aren't aware that there is vampires and werewolves, or at least most of them aren't. And so I like how the author wrote it as like it's like a parallel economy and a parallel government, and it's just
Hmm.
completely apart. And I think Etta and Fran were like kind of a bridge into that wasn't too abrupt.
Yeah, Amos talks about how there was one person before who he dated and almost wanted to make his blood mate, and he asked him. So he's had like this one love in the last 130 years or however long since he turned, and it was a man. And again, he didn't make a big deal about it. Tessa did notice that it was a man, and he kind of held his breath for a second, and all she did was ask, "Oh, tell me more about it." And this man, they got along well, everything was great, and then as soon as Amos came clean and said, "Oh, well, are you interested? Can I court you? Will you be my blood mate?" He tried to kill him. His this
He,
lover was like, "Oh, you're a vampire and these are real." And obviously Amos is a little bit traumatized by this because that's talk about like, "Oh, it's okay if it's rejection. What's the worst that can happen?"
Stake in the heart, literal.
Yes. And then Amos is kind of rolling it off his shoulder like, "Well, we can't actually die from a stake in the heart, but he tried."
Uh,
So he wasn't in any danger because this guy was not as strong as him and he didn't know the
oh,
rules.
betrayal.
But yes, the betrayal was just as real, even if his method of trying to kill him wasn't. And Tessa, it's like, oh my God, you poor thing. She had so many of those kind of reactions when she would hear. Sometimes he just casually mentioned something and
Yeah.
she would just be gutted, like, oh. Um, One of the things in the book is he has this like huge erection when he first feeds from her because if you're not live feeding, then you can't get an erection. And actually, I really liked those parts of the book. Like he would blush when he was around her, and he
Uh,
could blush because he hadn't been having live blood for 100 years. And but she was thinking to herself, like, "Oh man, you haven't even been able to have any kind of sexual response in 100 years because you've chosen to ethically not." feed on humans. Like she was really feeling for him.
Yeah, The Ethical Vampire. There's this book called The Ethical Slut. It's like the how-to book to have
Uh-huh.
relationships. He can write the ethical vampire.
Amos would be the cover boy.
He is. He's very into consent and he's very considerate. So,
I think if I'm remembering correctly, when so Etta would just kind of plop into his life without warning, without
yeah,
calling
she's
ahead. She's
total
just
like
this
dog.
like flurry of energy, whereas he's really put together. And those two, it's so funny watching them together because they obviously love each other and they have a lot of affection, but she drives him nuts.
A little
But
frustrated.
she burst into his house and he mentioned something about Tessa and he started to flush a little in his skin and she was just like, oh my God, like you've had live blood? Like she could tell immediately and read a lot into his emotions just by the fact that there was blood inside of him.
Yeah, yeah.
Another way that she showed so much empathy for him, she was just curious, but she was asking about his life before he turned and he described how he was married and he loved this woman, but she actually died before he even was turned because of some disease, tuberculosis or something. And she's kind of asking, "Oh, tell me about her." And Amos felt bad. He can't remember much. He's got memories, but they're sort of hazy. He just little things come and go. But it's
It's
been 150 years.
when they were married, but he doesn't remember her.
Doesn't really remember her face, but he remembers facts like her name or where she went to, where what her hometown was, but he can't really remember what it was like to be with her. And you can tell as he's describing this that he's really self-conscious about it and he feels like this makes him a bad husband and that he's disrespecting her memory. And Tessa had such a sweet response to make him feel better, just talking about grief. And she said, just because you've moved on from your grief doesn't make you a bad person. That's what people are supposed to do is move on.
Yeah, yeah, and that it could look like anything, really, and it's different for every person. And I, it was interesting that her dad had passed away 2 years prior, or maybe he was sick for 2 years. I can't remember. He had passed away in the recent past. And then her mom was a very self-involved character and used emotional manipulation to kind of make her daughter take care of her. But also her mom, after the dad passed away, went through this kind of detached depression period. So it sounded like she was kind of grieving for her mom in a way too in the
Hmm.
beginning. And then she's grieving for this family that she wants, but she doesn't have, which is like people who take care of her. So it's just like all types of grief too, not just the like, oh, someone's gone and I'm sad, but it's like, I don't know, we can grieve things that we never had, but that we wanted, or that we used to have and it's changed, or that we used to think was okay and now we realize we don't think it's okay. So I thought that was kind of a neat thread. And then, like you said, all those things she gets from Amos, plus he is actually never going to die.
Yeah, good point. And as long as she's his blood mate and he keeps feeding from her and she gets the venom from his fangs, which are is regenerative, then she's not going to die either.
Yeah, and the part of the plot line as this is going along is he's introducing this idea of blood mate to her, and that essentially it's a forever, right? Because they become more and more embedded, but as he feeds from her, she gets like life, I guess, from him, or this kind of what I don't even know what to call it, magic of his venom. And so she doesn't age. So it's kind of she's not, it's very forever. You know, you go on a date with someone and you're like, oh, I'll just see if I like him. And this is like,
Nope.
well, you like him for a really long time. So her quandary is like, what do I do? How do I go through? How do I commit to something not knowing anything about it?
I
So
think her quandary was that she knew from the get-go she wanted to be his blood mate and she just felt like that was too rash to make that decision so quickly. You
uh,
could really tell she didn't have this internal voice saying, "Oh, this is a bad idea, and I'm going to
yeah,
miss my
not that,
life." And it
no.
was just about, well, am I being responsible enough? And her character really wants a family, wants kids, wants. She feels like at this point in her life, she's only 31, but at this point in her life, she should have settled down, gotten married, had kids. Her brother, who's kind of a loser, already has a family of his own and kids of his own. So Amos is saying to her, well, if you're a blood mate, you're going to outlive your family and your kids. And I think part of her is like, hell yeah. I don't have any kids and I wouldn't mind losing my family. They all suck.
Yeah,
Say that out loud, but that's her niece and nephew. She does make a special note for them. Yeah, that would be sad, and I will mourn them as they grow old. But one thing I was wondering about, and I realize this is just how fiction works, but humans aren't aware of vampires in this world. She is now immortal for all intents and purposes, as long as she's getting his blood and they're linked for life. So does she how does her family reconcile that? I mean, they might for like 10 years just think she's got a good skincare routine, but
what has she been
at a
doing?
certain point, when her niece and nephew are now 50 years old and she's still rocking the 31-year-old face, I wonder how they overcome that. I really like with world building when specific instances like this are uh, explained by, usually it's actually kind of a silly explanation that
Yeah,
if you
like you
dig
have
too
a
deep.
disclaimer that you can trick them into.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe
she's just going to kind of peace out and say, "Oh, I'm moving to Spain and I will just call you on the phone every so often."
Spain does not have the internet.
That's right. We
We can't FaceTime, but I'll write letters.
she's like now becoming one of those scammers.
Yeah, she's like backwards catfishing her family. Well, the plot gets there's different elements and there's danger and there's the bad guys and there's some battles and there are a couple of scary parts where she's actually attacked and things happen. But also it's fun to read and I
It
think
was fun.
I love her writing. I like her writing style. It flows and it's descriptive, and I felt pulled in by the characters. And there's, in theory, angst, but I didn't feel angsty reading it between the characters. But like you said, with the family, for example, that was like agitating to read about the family.
Yes. I thought this book maybe I would have preferred it more if it was more of a novella type. The first third or so, I just loved it. It
Yeah.
was them getting to know each other. It was her showing up to his house, and you could feel the anticipation of both of them as they knew there was going to be a new appointment. Because every 2 days or so, she would come over and he would feed on her, and they had a set time. And
Yeah.
that it was so fun watching them. Wasn't even falling in love at first. It was just the anticipation of this new exciting thing. And not only that, but he was getting his needs met. He was getting blood, and she knew she was going to have a good time because the way Amos described it, every human is different, but a few of them, a small percentage, they respond very favorably to the venom in the fangs. And
Fully coolly as.
yes, so he would bite her and kind of be like on top of her, and she'd just start orgasming and like run her hands through his hair, and she's dry humping him. He's like pressed into her. It was like heartwarming to read about all these good feelings they were having. But then after they had maybe 3 scenes of feeding, it was still kind of the same thing. Because, like we said, he's being a gentleman and he really didn't want to cross this boundary of, well, I've paid you for your blood, but that doesn't mean that you've consented to sex. And also, I'm more powerful than you, and your consent's a little iffy while you're under the spell of my
And
venom.
money, and you're doing this for money.
Right. Yeah, he was well aware of that power. Just there were a lot of power differentials between them,
Mhm.
between the money and the fact that she has this involuntary reaction to his bite. And then also he's a vampire and she's a human.
In the vampire slang, they call it a bed and breakfast. So you eat and sleep,
Yes.
or sleep and eat. I don't know,
So
something.
eventually they did get to that point, but I just thought that part of it, while it was, I think, maybe the best part of the book, it dragged on for so long that then it started to almost get boring. So even the angst that happened in the scenes with the werewolves that were a little bit scary, they didn't even really do it for me.
Yeah.
I know it's good to have conflict in books, and I might have not enjoyed it if there was none at all, but to me, I felt like the beauty of this story was just the two of them getting to know each other and his slow descent into like allowing his animal side to take over because she was into it.
Yeah.
And once that was kind of satisfied, the rest of it fell flatter. But I really liked the book.
This is actually the third time I've read it.
Okay.
And the first time I read it was probably 5 years ago. So then I reread it maybe a year and a half ago or something, but it's just kind of comfort, ease, and
Yeah, it is a comfort read. I read it in a day.
yeah, it's very like fun to read. It's like enjoyable. But it is interesting that you said that because it's like the beginning is one world. It all takes place in Amos's house. It's very much between the two of them. And then where does it go from there once they kind of climax? Um, and so it is kind of the introduction of this external drama, and they're a little bit two separate uh like stories almost.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
like a different act of the book.
yeah, exactly. But yes, those all of that is valuable, and I just think it's real sweet. And I love her writing, and this is one in a part of a series that's called Tooth and Claw, and some of the others are about the werewolves. They're not all bad guys. They are a little more like aggressively wolfishly alpha than him, but also lovable in their own way. So check it out next time you need your sweet, dirty predator, old-fashioned, hot
Gentlemen,
gentleman vampire romance. And that's that. Holly, what are we reading next week?
we are reading The Prospects by K.T. Hoffman. This is about two minor league baseball players, and one is a trans man and the other is a cisgender man.
Ooh, spicy. And yeah, I haven't heard the author before. KT as in the letters, and then Hoffman, Hoffman. So I just ordered the book. I'm excited to read it and review it. I think it's a Rivals to Lovers. Is that what you?
Yes, they don't seem like total enemies. They knew each other in the past. They played on the same college team, but then some friction happened, and then of course he gets traded to one of the players gets traded to the other's team.
Ain't that the way?
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to read it. And Holly and I, if you aren't watching this and are listening, Holly and I were on Zoom this time. And as always, I miss seeing her and being able to stroke her cheek affectionately. But
I think you'll be able to get this sweet sweet cheek in just another week.
awesome. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us.
Okay, goodbye.
Live after.